Well, thank you everybody for joining today. We do have one other guest that hopefully will be logging on as a guest speaker. And when they do, we may switch it over just real quick. She unfortunately has had power problems, so is in and out of service, but said that she was going to try to log on for us. But in the meantime, Gavin is here and I'm really excited. It's the middle of the night for him, so I'm sure some of you on the call can probably relate. But thank you very much again for Gavin for joining. For those of you that are new to the call, this is a pretty casual format. Gavin is going to kind of share where he's been, what he's working on, and then open it up for questions. For those of you that did submit questions, Gavin does have access to them, so we can kind of speak to some of those as well. We will give it a few more minutes to let people get logged on, probably until about 5 after Gavin. I always say right now is when we start to get kind of a flood of people that start to register or log in. And so as we wait. Other than that, you guys, thank you very, very much for joining. Thank you, Bruce. It's good to see you again. Hi, Dave. Hi, Jeremy. It's good to see your guys' face. It's always nice when I log in. Hi, Klaus. It's good to see you as well. I missed this last week when we did the webinar series. I felt like I didn't have my community of people in front of us compared to over the live interview. And did any of you, I know Bruce, you were on today, but saw the interview with Dan Kerr. Is that how you say his last name, Bruce? Kerr?
Yes, Kerr. Yes, okay, absolutely. Good. Great interview with Dan, with my buddy Dan.
Yeah, it was good. Thank you very much for joining. Very, very fun. Also, just a reminder, we are membership based. Thank you very much to all of our members that are on here. It's $75 a month. We're getting really excited and getting ready. Oh, I see Michelle. I'm excited to see her on. I'm getting really excited because we're getting ready to launch our software, the Hemp Hallway, where you will log on. Everybody can go to the Hemp Hallway to create connections, distribute data. We have a bunch of different resources and partnerships that we've created for access to different resources. In fact, I wanted to tell you about that, Bruce and Tracy, for your X Prize. There's a database and resource portal that we now have to search different content and old both news articles and accredited or validated research. And so I'll help make those connections as well. I'm pretty excited about. But hi, Tracy. Thank you very much for joining. I encourage everybody, please, to join, support what we are doing. We cannot continue to keep doing what we're doing without your support. I have to give a shout out, Michelle, whether you want me to or not. Thank you very much for being part of our team and for everything that you do. If any of you do hear from Michelle, she is making calls, checking in, finding out what you guys need, how we best connect you, talking about memberships, asking questions, answering questions about the new portal or a new membership software and platform that we're launching. And so don't hesitate to reach out to her and or I if you guys do need anything, but don't be startled when she calls, and she's the beautiful face on the other line, not me. So with that being said, thank you very, very much for everybody for joining. I'm excited to have you guys and excited to start the conversation, and I'll turn it over to you now, Gavin, if you want to do an intro and kind of talk about what you're working on and where you came from and all the good stuff that we're here for. And hi, James. It's good to see your camera and your face. Hello, sir. Okay, well, it's all you, Gavin. Go ahead.
All right. G'day, folks. How are you? My name's Gavin Kay. So I'm calling from the bottom southwest corner of Western Australia on a farm called Northcliffe, Canterbury Farms in Northcliffe. So it is a regenerative avocado, truffle, blueberry operation. And so the man that I do a lot of work with, Peter Gwynn, owner of the operation, is a visionary farmer, which is critical in this process. So I'm in a caravan, or a trailer as you call it, which is a little bit cold and breezy at the moment, but it's just where I'm at. Just to give you the heads up, if Heather comes on, I think we'll probably listen to her when we can, because she was going to give the broad context around carbon markets, that information process associated with it. It's something that I actually did in a previous role that I had, was educate people about carbon and climate. So I'm not doing that anymore. I'm specifically working with farmers on farms, trying to make it happen. So my background, where I'm at the moment, is actually close to where I was born, and grew up in the wheat belt of Western Australia. So sort of 5th generation farming family in Western Australia. Our family farm now is in the middle of a salt pan. So it is no longer farmable. Large sections of it are no longer farmable. And that's a big problem in Australia, is salt, which is resulting from rising water tables and bringing salt to the surface. So the deforestation that was required to settle the land is what sort of ended up being a scourge. As a result of that, my first research work when I finished my degree was associated with inland saline aquaculture. So using that salty water to grow fish in the middle of Western Australia. So remediating, it's sort of got various deficiencies. So I had to remediate that and basically trying to stabilize those marginal lands. And from there, I was involved in my honours project, was associated with using salt tolerant grasses to treat the aquaculture wastewater. So basically continually trying to close loops on both the damage that we've done and how we can utilize, basically upscale the waste products, I guess, that we generate and turn them into something functional, usable. So using halophyte, salt tolerant grasses, salt excretors to do that. And did a lot of work in inland saline aquaculture and research and whatever else, which was all highly, well, it was actually very successful and very interesting. We many years ago, we nearly won a competition called New Inventors in Australia, which was a TV show. So we got to the final, the national final of that, for a floating tank system that sat inside a dam and pumped the water up using air and whatever else, which was an amazing energy efficient system. So anyway, which is another potential for hemp, is the hemp seed in aquaculture feed. I think that's a huge potential going forward as well. And yeah, so we use algae to strip nutrients out, constructed wetlands, all sorts of stuff. After that, I moved to Far North Queensland, where I've been until last year. I've been in Far North Queensland for 12 years. And up there, I had a very diverse role where I worked in an organisation called Terrain Natural Resource Management. So in Australia, we're geographically covered by these natural resource management groups. So they cover all of Australia geographically. And typically what they are is a non-statutory, so not backed by law, not-for-profit organisation that gets a lot of its money from government. So government has something they need to achieve ecologically on ground. The money goes to these groups. And then I'm not sure sort of, I mean, we work with the Kerr Coalition from over there. They came to Australia and did some work with us over here. So I'm not sort of sure what that analogue is for you guys. But in that role, I worked in Indigenous land management, in catchment repair work. And I had a specific role for quite a long time in a project called Degree Celsius, which was about developing a landscape approach to carbon sequestration by engaging private freehold land, so private landholders. And that looked at forestry, it looked at soil carbon sequestration, it looked at reduced emissions from nitrous oxide reduction, and it actually formed the basis, that project formed the basis of what now has become Australia's carbon farming initiative. And so I was the person that ran around on the ground getting ground measurements, you know, measuring trees, working out what forestry plantations had done there, trying to, so, and we developed a methodology that got assessed under one of the international voluntary standards, the CCB, Climate, Carbon and Biodiversity Standard. And sort of got through the end phases, that auditing process for the voluntary market. And then we had a change of government and they threw it out on the spot. You know, so they didn't throw it out, so to speak, but Australia moved away at that stage from a regulated carbon market. And in this whole conversation that we'll have and other people will have and go away with and whatever, the legislative flip-flopping in the carbon world has been an absolute bane in Australia. It's really prevented broad-scale uptake of this process. It's really diminished some great work that a lot of people and organisations have done. It's been really hard work for a lot of good people that have poured time and effort into it. And to have governments change their mind and then suddenly it throws whole industries backwards. It's been terrible for renewables, for landscape stuff, all sorts of things. And we don't have a supportive government in Australia in terms of either its belief in the science of climate change or the imperative to act. And, and from my perspective, we are so far beyond the need to act, it's frightening. Like we've, you know, I won't go down the rabbit hole. Like my wife has got me to stop talking at dinner parties. She's like, no, Gavin, no more. No more. So we won't go down the rabbit hole of where we're at and the absolute imperative about why we need more of what we're doing here and getting people together and sharing minds and information and vulnerabilities and, you know, desires and all that stuff to try and get some real action happening, because we need to.
Can anybody hear me, or is it me that's frozen? You guys are good? Okay.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
He said that he had some problems earlier. Does anybody have anything that they want to add real quick while we're waiting for Gavin to come back?
I am.
Daniel, I'd love an intro from you as well.
Okay. Well, nice to meet all of you. My name is Daniel Higby. I'm the president and CEO of the Hemp blockchain, and we are focused on dynamically and collaboratively creating a carbon protocol. We're calling the Carbon Protocol Initiative. We are working with MIT Media Lab, Harvard, and Yale to define a new methodology for carbon sequestration, specifically tied to industrial hemp and cannabis production.
Hey, Daniel, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Any questions? It's great to meet you as well. Any, I guess, advice? I could read some of the questions. We've got a whole bunch of questions as far as how is it being calculated, or what procedures or policies do you see being put in place to actually calculate and give credit where credit is due along this supply chain for carbon. Gavin, you're on mute still, but Daniel, I'd love for you to chime into this conversation and kind of add anything that you would like along this line.
Sure. So one of the things that we're really trying to identify is where are the faults in existing carbon methodologies, carbon capture methodologies. You know, some of the issues around the voluntary carbon markets are, you know, traditional fraud, and specific to solar industry. A lot of fraud was taking place where carbon credits were being issued and really not being truthful. So our focus is really on ensuring through the blockchain immutable data that can prove that we've actually sequestered out of the atmosphere 1 ton of carbon. So we're taking into account, we're doing studies, we've got 5 universities in Thailand. We are changing approximately 40% of the tobacco crop in Thailand over to industrial hemp. And we'll be tracking all of those carbon credits for the Thai government. And then of course, doing multiple studies here in the US to identify and truly be able to certify that we've actually sequestered a ton of carbon utilizing hemp.
Awesome.
And we'll be using all types of technology, including pre and post plant soil carbon tests, drones to measure biomass production. We'll be tracking weather, irrigation, etc.
Gavin, go ahead. I saw you had a question.
Yes. So I was just going to ask, in terms of what you're doing for your assessment of the carbon sequestration associated with hemp, are you doing a life cycle assessment as well? Like, are you looking at what products it becomes and then how the permanence associated with what the hemp is manufactured into?
Without question, yeah. We will have different classes and expirations of carbon credits based on the use. So you can't just grow hemp and then till it into the ground and call that a carbon credit. So we will have all different types of classifications of carbon credits as well as expirations based on the use. So for example, if the biomass is turned into biochar and used in regenerative farming, that's a good thing, right? But if the biomass is used for CBD extraction and then burnt, that's not a good use. And so we will be tracking it throughout the life cycle of the product and then what it's eventually put into.
So, and what about nitrous oxide? So are you baselining, in terms of additionality, are you baselining the practice on that land associated with the tobacco and the fertilizer use in the tobacco crop, and then to what it's becoming? So the change from tobacco to hemp? Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
And we're also tracking how the pyrolysis is performed and whether the off gases are captured or not. So we're really tracking everything. And then
cool.
even our
That's
drones are solar powered.
Of course. No, that's brilliant. That's great stuff. Good effort. I like it.
I was gonna say, I'm sorry we lost you when we were frozen like this, but
yeah, you always hope you get frozen. You hope you're frozen in a decent pose when it happens.
I've gotten used to just looking. Well, Jeremy, I know you've got a question really quick, and then I want to turn it back over to Gavin, but go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, it's kind of for Gavin, but Daniel, you might be able to help me as well, or anyone. So I'm looking into different academic research papers based on this, and we want to do a mix of grain versus like fiber-based industrial hemp. Is there really any data that shows differentiation between the amount of carbon collected from like a fiber-based industrial hemp that grows, 13 feet versus a grain-based hemp versus like a hybrid style? I haven't been able to find any specific data on those pieces. There's like, they're beginning to find how much carbon the hemp itself is collecting, but there hasn't been a specific of this type of hemp. Yes, it grows taller, but it's actually like getting less carbon than say this type. Is there anything on that we have?
I might just go first, if that's all right. So are you talking about soil carbon sequestration or biomass capture? Like, so in the material that is harvested, or both?
Either. I haven't. So I'm trying to I'm trying to create actual research on the different pieces that we're missing in the research now. So I'm going through different articles and reaching out to different universities and saying, okay, where are the holes? And in terms of like carbon collecting and the carbon credits and all of that, there's a lot of gaps of people saying kind of different numbers. They're similar, but they're different. And I'm trying to figure out if I should base research and like push towards that side, or if it's something where it's kind of irrelevant now. It's really, where is it on the timeline of importance of like the carbon collection?
Yeah, they're great questions, to be honest, because the quicker we ask and answer those things, that we can leapfrog a lot of stuff in between. I think you really have to go back to that little bit of conversation we were just having about permanence. Mm-hmm. So if you're harvesting for seed, specifically for seed, and you're leaving fiber in the paddock to decompose in the paddock, then essentially what you're leaving behind isn't necessarily being sequestered. It'll get broken down by microbes. Some of it will become labile carbon, in the soil, but a lot of it will get outgassed by the microbial decomposition of the mass in the paddock. Whereas if you're harvesting for fiber, you can then assess, say it get turned into hemp paper, which if it becomes an amazing parchment manuscript and gets preserved for 1,000 years, brilliant. But a lot of paper will have a turnover of say 3 to 5 years. So once again, it's not really staying out of the atmosphere for that long, because it goes from paper back to landfill, gets gassed out by microbes back to the atmosphere. If it gets turned into hempcrete and then gets turned into a building product, then you maybe write it up as, who knows, 200 years out of the atmosphere. So a lot of it depends on that, how much of that biomass will be turned into what component of what you're talking about. And again, with soil carbon, that's where some of the difficulty is, with how long lived is the carbon that is being stored in soils. and soil carbon methodologies, testing it, proving it, all that sort of stuff. It's where a lot of these, it's where a lot more research in Australia, the government says that they've committed $200 million to soil carbon research, but that's over 20 years or something. It's $10 million. You know, it might be 10 years, 20 million a year. Anyway, basically we're trying to find ways to measure soil carbon quickly. So I guess what I'm saying is you kind of have to work out what the hemp is going to become, because, you know, you will be storing more carbon in that, you know, in the large biomass. But then, so you would think from a logical perspective, if you're harvesting it for fiber, the logical extrapolation would be if you're harvesting that for fiber and the fiber is being value added into a product, that will stay out of the atmosphere longer. So that's the above ground stuff. Below ground, I don't have the technical specs on what sequesters better below ground, whether it be seed based or hemp or fiber based. I'm not sure.
I have a quick question.
If I could just answer as well, Jeremy.
Yes.
We're running tests on approximately 10 different strains of hemp, all different types, herd, biomass, you know, anything, all different types of industrial hemp. And we will be putting and publishing those papers, but it's going to be a little while. I feel your pain. I've been looking for the same data. And in fact, we're looking at it from, we're trying to find that data for traditional agriculture crops so that we can contrast and compare the hemp biomass to a traditional biomass in traditional agriculture. So if you find that, please share that with me.
Yes,
Awesome.
the search will continue. Don't worry. It's just, I was like, am I just beating my head against the wall trying to find this?
We're in the same boat.
But it's finding
more.
the
I
solutions
just
we
spent
need the
5 hours
numbers.
with you.
Oh, Bob, I accidentally deleted or accidentally muted you. You got to unmute yourself real quick. But John, I'd want to go over to John's question. Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned that. I was just with the farm people, the USDA and the state ag people on for the last 5 hours, and they was like, well, we can do this. We have a system in place. We need buyers for the carbon credits. It's like, I think I can generate that. So I've got the people on the farm side listening to me. So get a hold of me after the meeting.
There's no shortage of buyers for the carbon credits.
No, there's plenty of buyers.
The European, just have a little look at the graph for the European carbon trading prices, and you'll see the demand for this sort of stuff.
Hey, John, question. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. So I have a question about a specific process, and that is there's a company called Carbon Kerr, for instance, that takes the carbon and freezes it and shoots it into concrete, making this, they claim, super hard concrete. And, you know, I don't know the science, but, and then the idea is that it's stuck, it's captured in the concrete for forever. However, it seems like if you do an end-to-end process, it seems like they're taking canisters of CO2 and shipping it all over the country in order to do this. And I just wonder if they're creating, you know, what the total footprint is on that, if anybody can comment.
Yeah, no, I don't know if I'd be investing. I think whenever
they're doing great because of the carbon credits, right?
Yeah, they're doing great, but I don't know if they're doing great things. Whenever humanity tries to recreate something that nature does perfectly, we normally do it imperfectly. So I think when a plant can do that job for us, and kick in a whole lot of other benefits along the way, maybe we're better off leaving it up to the plants.
Right. Maybe you can take the hemp and put it into the concrete. Or something like that.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Or maybe you can
100%.
just use hemp blocks.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, instead of, listen, I have a quick question for you is, how sincere do you believe the Australian government is about going after carbon reduction, or is it a political facade? Yeah, I see you're laughing. Is it a political facade to pretend
I'm
we
not going to
care?
be able to not laugh. They're not even, they're not, I wouldn't say they're pretending they're caring. I wouldn't, no, there's no desire at the moment. They're doing the bare minimum, the absolute bare minimum that they can. And it's been that way with this particular, the problem for Australia is that we've painted ourselves into a corner in terms of generating so many royalties out of fossil fuels. And for some reason, we have this belief that we're incapable of anything better. Like we've somehow found our way into a situation where it's almost like we don't believe in ourselves that we can do something better. And it's so obscure because there's so many brilliant people and innovators and, you know, and indigenous knowledge and, you know, fire management practices. And we desperately need, Australia will suffer from climate change more than most. And so we desperately need, I mean, I worked as a tour guide on the Great Barrier Reef for 2 years. And the reef that I worked on in 2007 now has 50% of the coral cover. So it's had 3 mass bleaching events since 2007. So I can't take my children that were born in 2008 and 2010, I can't take them to the same reefs that I dove on in 2007 and see the same things. Well, it's madness. Mm-hmm. It's madness. So we need to act really fast. And yeah, the government, it's lip service at best. But you know, well, you can't wait for governments to do things. They don't have people's best interests at heart. We just got to get on and do it, you know, and generate the products. And I mean, the thing about something like hemp building products. So Ilya Saba's a fella in Western Australia who has a company, Hemp Rail International. So he's now manufacturing hemp railway sleepers that he's planning on importing or exporting to China. He's building a plant at the moment that makes hemp bricks. So they don't even use a concrete render you know, to glue them together. He's using an adhesive. And when I was at his facility, he had a block and he had a propane oxy torch that had been on the block for half an hour and it hadn't burned. So it's got amazing thermal properties. One brick, so degrees. Something that covers the same size as 4 traditional bricks is the same weight as one. So he's making these 350, I suppose, bricks by 125 or 150. You know, so you can lay the bricks really easy. They're amazing thermal properties. He's developing a paint that is, you know, it's got thermal resistance properties. So, I mean, hemp's, you know, there's some really amazing stuff being done with it. And so the difficulty he's having is sourcing the right form of hemp. He needs hemp grown a particular way. So that's where I see the downfall at the moment. And that's back to the conversation about the USDA and that sort of stuff. The agronomy of hemp is where it's really important, I think, for the brains to get together to go, okay, how do we fit this? I work in cropping systems. So, you know, governments, Australia's probably the 4th least subsidised farming community in the developed world. So our farmers get very little in the way of subsidies. You know, America's, I don't know, way up on us. Like there's very little protection for cropping systems, whatever else. So farmers here, it has to be economical for them to grow it. So to be able to supply someone like Ilya, we have to work out how the farmers can get paid enough to canola prices at the moment. People are like, oh, well, we'll focus on canola this year because you look what's happened in America, low prices. So governments won't incentivize it. You know, there's so much vested interest, and this is a transformative process, you know?
Gavin, I have a question for you on the salt soil in the soil remediation in the saltier areas. Did you come up with a solution for that? And have you done or have heard of anyone doing soil remediation, biochar, and some other form to fix the salty soil issues?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we came up with a solution. There's a bunch of different approaches to it. And I think biochar will play a part of it. I mean, the increasing soil organic carbon is the most effective way to increase a plant's resilience against intrusive salt. So however you start to get life back, you start to stabilize those zones. So the short answer is no solution, but there's a lot of really promising practices that prevent the increasing marginalization of land. And for everyone out there, the world loses 1% of its arable land each year to desertification and salinization. So we have to stabilize those fringing zones that are degrading. And I think that's where hemp has, some real potential, and something that we really need to be looking at is to go, okay, how do we stop the march of what we are doing? And there's a whole lot of reasons for that. But yeah, being able to get some productive capacity back out of those. So that salt tolerant grass that I use, I mean, I've seen it in constructed wetlands growing as a mat across the surface of the water, and it excretes salt at the leaf surface, and animals love it. I mean, anyone that's eaten lamb grown on saltbush country, it's a much more flavoursome meat than stuff grown in what would look like much better country. So there's a guy, Alan Lauder, who's done a lot of work in Australia. He's written books on it, sort of stabilising those salt zones. But yeah, it's been a problem since soldier settlement times in Australia. So when people got back from World War II and got given tenements of land, that was when the first paper on salt in Australia was written in 1917. And then guys came back from World War II and they basically were told to clear the land. If they wanted the land, they had to clear it. So it's been going on for a long time here. And industrial agriculture is not helping it. Salt-based fertilizers don't do wonderful things for salt in the soil, amazingly.
Bruce, I know you had a question, and I was going to call on you earlier, and then I stopped, so I apologize. Go ahead, Bruce.
There's something I just wanted to quickly ask from what you just said. I don't think we should really be waiting for the government, because politicians are owned by corporations, as we all know. And to quote The Who, we won't be fooled again, I think. But
he listens to Dad's music.
Brilliant.
Yeah, but James is actually what you were talking about regards like blocks and construction. We actually have a meeting tomorrow morning, which is super cool. It is a automotive recycling yard, which James is very big into automotive recycling. And he's picking up Bruce's torch. Hey, Bruce. And
hi guys.
And he's going to be making cars out of hemp. But more excitingly, he's looking to convince this recycling yard to use hemp as the building blocks for their new buildings, so that the public can become more aware of the value of hemp, and then the public can tell the government what to do, instead of the government pretending that they care, when we know that it's all about oil money and corporate money, and those people, they don't care. Whereas his generation,
yeah, we do.
he's going to kick ass.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think in terms of your generation, I think where hemp has real potential is 3D printing of housing, 3D printing of buildings, because it's lightweight. It can be, you could set up a system to do rapid building of housing. There's a whole lot of stuff, actually. I think in terms of that building potential, and going back to that previous conversation that we were having about life cycle assessment of hemp, I think one other critical thing about it is, because of its insulating properties, you build a building out of it, it's better in terms of heat retention or expulsion, so basically it's not as reliant on fossil fuels, if that's where your energy source is coming from, to heat or cool the housing. So how do you even calculate something like that through the life cycle of a building to be able to say this is how much energy has been saved throughout the life of the building by having a more insulated material, having it built out of a better material. So there's some amazing numbers on hemp. I read a paper on hemp where they incorporated 1% hemp that had been treated with a hydroxide into cement and increased its tensile strength by 17%. So even if you can just a figure like that, you think about even the potential to reduce the amount of, say you reduce the amount of concrete used on the planet by 1%, it's such an enormous impact on the climate. So doing all that research, pulling the heads and numbers together is critical.
For sure. Okay, Bruce, I want to get to your question. I've called on you 3 times. I'm so sorry. How about it?
Thank you, Mandi. Is Daniel still here, or did you drop off? Because I had a question specifically for Daniel.
I'm here, Bruce.
Oh, you are? Oh, okay, great. There you are. You moved over to the other side of my screen. Yeah, the question I had was talking to Julie Lerner of Pan Exchange about carbon credits, and we were talking about this, and I presented last month on this topic too. And the question is, or what she pointed out was that these carbon credits are typically focused around soils, right? That's where most of the activity is right now. And so I'm glad to hear you and Gavin talking about the carbon credits that would be tied to the materials that are made out of hemp, the durable goods especially, right? I mean, you could make a shirt that might last for 5 years, like this hemp shirt from the Kerr Foundation, or you could make a car that might last for 50 years, or you could make a hempcrete house. But what she pointed out was that what still has to occur is some groups of manufacturers would have to get together and apply for these types of carbon credits, right? Just like farmers have to get together in some sort of cooperative to be able to offer carbon credits. Manufacturers of hempcrete homes or what have you would have to come together somehow and offer this as a commodity carbon credit. Can you answer what's going on there, and if that's happening, and when you think it might happen, or is that totally off base?
No, that's absolutely correct. And one of the biggest problems is the issuance, right? And the verification, validation of the carbon credits, and who are the regulatory bodies and what are the requirements to validate those carbon credits. And that's one of the issues that really everyone is running into. So what we're doing with the Carbon Protocol Initiative is working with MIT, Harvard, and Yale to incorporate all of the regulatory body requirements into a technological or a technology solution whereby we can, through the use of drones and carbon sensors and weather stations and satellites, provide the regulatory bodies or the issuers the proof that we have truly sequestered a 1 ton of carbon. Now, once we do this, and we're doing it again with 5 universities in Thailand, as well as with the leading universities here in the US and the UK, we will then promote and prove that our carbon protocol is valid, and at any time regulatory bodies are going to be able to access our data via API. So companies like Puro and Vera, existing issuers, will be able to check and validate our carbon credits. Now, we're actually working with a group that's building 2 million homes per year in India out of hempcrete. They're actually fueling furnaces with hempcrete, or with hemp. So there's a lot happening in the world, but it's really going to depend on all of us, the entire community, working together. So although we came up with the Carbon Protocol Initiative, I'm not going to own it. It's not going to be owned by the hemp blockchain. It's going to be given to the world right? Once we prove it and we've got the scientific studies to prove the benefits and the beauty of this plant, then we will then release that to the world.
So is it safe to assume that in the future here, the entity that builds these 1 million homes from Hempcrete in India, they're really the ones that are going to be issuing the carbon credits? It's not going to be the farmers per se.
No,
it would
we
be the
will
builders that prove it or something. Who
No,
actually
we will actually issue the carbon credits on the hemp blockchain through the use of the Carbon Protocol Initiative, but it will be the builder that built those hempcrete homes that owns the carbon credits, or the farmer that grows the hemp, they will own those carbon credits. We don't own them. Just because we issue them, we don't own them, right?
Right.
We do charge a transaction fee because we will tokenize those carbon credits and allow for the carbon credits to be used as a currency, essentially a tokenized currency within the hemp blockchain to transact amongst seed propagators and cultivators and processors. And so
yeah, and I hate to harp on this every month, but from what I've calculated on the back of the envelope, the sequestration potential for hemp is actually at least 10 times higher when you turn it into a durable good that can last for 100 years than the amount of sequestration in the soil. Do you understand that to be pretty much? Pardon?
Oh yes, you're absolutely correct. Like I forgot who it was that was talking first. He mentioned that, you know, unless you're turning the biomass into something, you're not really, you know, there's soil sequestration. So the hemp plant does bring the carbon into the soil, but as soon as you harvest that biomass, unless that biomass is turned into a usable product, that no longer exists as retained carbon, right?
Yep.
So that can't be sold or traded. That's the end of that carbon, right? You have to turn it into hempcrete. You have to turn it into clothing.
Thank you, Daniel. We will be in touch, my man.
Excellent.
Good stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, and so it comes down to that methodological development. So say in India, a farmer grows the hemp, she will sell it to say a manufacturer of the next product, and then they most likely will be the ones that will then turn it into something that has a methodology attached to it that they'll generate the credits for. So the farmer's sale of the commodity will have an inherent value associated with the fact that the next person is going to generate something that will have carbon credits attached to it. The farmer would potentially be able to say you could validate something associated with their soil carbon. You might be able to validate that. So there's various steps to the chain that will help people turn it, I guess, commodify the carbon side of things. I think what we need to be conscious of is the fact that the white, you know, the whatever they want to call it, the global north, even though I'm in the south and in the same boat, is that we are going to be crying out for carbon, you know, sequestration opportunities, and in developing countries they need food production, and so what will be interesting in terms of the agronomy of hemp is how it ties in to cycling of other productive crops on properties, and it does beyond what it does above ground. It seems to have really interesting biostimulant properties for subsequent crops that are grown after it in a rotation. And I think some of the work that you're doing there, developing those methodologies, I think the agronomy of it will be really interesting. So I work in regenerative agriculture. So I do large scale composting, biofertilizers, biochar, make my own char, I make inoculated char. I do amendments, large-scale amendments for farm, anaerobic digestion, soldier flies, vermicast, all that sort of stuff. So I help people build systems and implement them. And farming this stuff regeneratively, to be able to tick the box on, I mean, it doesn't have a high insecticide use, which is great. It doesn't have a high herbicide use because it gets out of the ground so quick. But working out, say you want to prep the soil, working out what you do prior to putting your hemp crop in. So, you know, in terms of cover cropping, whatever else, and particular compositions of cover crops beforehand, all that sort of stuff. I think that's where you really get some significant value out as well. And then So though you can't necessarily trade the biomass that's left in the paddock, it becomes a critical part of the next cropping cycle. So the fact that you are generating a lot of above ground biomass, so you harvest the fibre and then you leave the other material, maybe you leave the leaf material behind. People go, oh, there's no value in it if you're not taking it. Well, there is value because we've stripped our soils bare of carbon. We've lost 60% of the organic carbon in our agricultural soils. If you are leaving stuff behind, what you then do is work out how you get that into a longer form of carbon in the soil. So that will be an interesting part of what you're working with, and the people that you're working with is looking at, okay, what are the, and I mean, I don't know if you've ever touched base with John Kemp from Advancing Eco-Agriculture, but I mean, in terms of a resource of a human, you really should look up what he does. He's an absolute genius. I listen to his podcast constantly. He's a wonderful man doing really big things in the States. And amazing some of the people that he's engaged with. I mean, you'll really leap forward in terms of, and wonderful share of knowledge and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, and that's actually for everyone. Advancing Eco-Ag, you listen to the podcast and you just get a whole new take on biological agriculture and how things can be done. Yeah, and I think a lot of people are jumping, not necessarily jumping on whatever. Anyway, you see hemp as everyone's very excited about it, and that's brilliant. But for me, it's another crop, and it is a brilliant crop. Don't get me wrong. But I think it's critical to go, okay, how does this fit in a production system? And I hate the idea of, us as Westerners going, oh, go and, do this because we need to sequester carbon. Well, for me, it's about the carbon cycle as much as it is about carbon sequestration. Money, you put money in a bank, but you want to be able to use that money. And that I guess that's like carbon. There's no point just thinking about having it all locked away in soil. It needs to be a dynamic process.
So along those lines, and would you just repeat that? John Kemp, Gavin, is that what you said?
Kemph. John Kemp, advancing eco-agriculture.
I just posted him into the chat.
Yeah, no, great, really, really good stuff.
So we're one part of the India homes build and project is that we're using we're growing industrial hemp at a scale that's, I mean, enormous, to start with biochar, right? So we're going to grow thousands of acres of hemp, create biochar, put that into the sand surrounding the developments that we're building.
Yep.
And then through use of dung and cow manure, everything we can get our hands on, we're going to add that with some bugs to help create soil to grow, then hay to graze cattle and truly make it a regenerative process. So, and this is over my pay grade. I'm the software guy, right? But from a farming perspective, I think it's really important what you said is that hemp is a fantastic crop, and it is truly amazing at its carbon sequestration capabilities, but it can also feed the world and clothe the world. And the high protein content of the seed itself is just amazing. So, we need to look at it as an industry and contribute where we can to promote all the uses of hemp.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, guys, we have a couple of other questions, and I had a question for you real quick, Daniel. When will your software be available for implementation for your?
So we are not going to be releasing the product until probably early first or second quarter of next year. It's in testing. We want to make sure we get it right. I'm going to be personally going out and meeting with farmers and processors and understanding their needs and make sure that the product is easy to use. So primarily what the farmers out in the field will use is just a smartphone. That's all they'll need is a smartphone. And in fact, in Thailand, we're actually doing a chat bot where the system will ask questions of the farmer ask them to verify. We will use government data to confirm that the farmer is who they say they are, and the GPS location of their farms, etc.
Okay, cool. I want to go through a couple questions really quick. We'll keep them short. We are almost up at an hour, and this is obviously a conversation that we could talk about all the time. This is a reoccurring monthly meeting, just heads up. And so it is on the first Tuesday of every month. So please come back and we'll continue this and continue to go. But I also encourage you guys to connect with each other offline. The purpose of this is to really help you guys drive conversation. And so be sure you share your chat or reach out to people. And then if you have any additional questions or need help connecting with people, don't hesitate to reach out. I can kind of help facilitate that as well. But Kevin, if you want to go ahead first, and then Brian, I saw you were on earlier and probably withdrew your question to not have your hand up so much, and then Amber. So go ahead, Kevin.
Hi, thank you. I guess Gavin kind of seemed to talk about a lot of what was he's describing as far as being just biochar driven. And I'm glad to see Daniel just spoke up about it. I was curious how that is, how much biochar work is being done down in Australia. Some of the things I've been reading is you guys are more advanced with it than we are in the US.
Yeah, so I was involved in a large-scale government project called CombiVan, which was combination biochar and compost on farms, which is a large-scale trial looking at reducing nitrous oxide emissions. There's, I guess we are advanced. There are difficulties. Amazingly, one of the difficulties in Australia is the EPA regulations associated with emissions from a pyrolysis unit. So I helped get a grant for a guy. I drove the grant, to be honest, and he's built a continuous flow pyrolysis unit that is now an amazing unit sitting in a shed because he can't afford the licensing applications to commission it.
Is that in Australia, Gavin? Is that pyrolysis machine in Australia?
Absolutely, in Far North Queensland. Yep.
It is, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And so I've actually got a really good contact for you for some of the people that you're working with in Vietnam. That I can't remember the guy's name that I've been looking at, but he's basically talking about open sourcing a pyrolysis unit for use in developing countries with not-for-profit organizations. So I think the sort of stuff that you're talking about is a perfect fit. And so, yes, biochar has got a lot. There's a group on the East Coast I don't know where Larson feeds are, whether they're northern New South Wales or Queensland, but he's doing amazing stuff incorporating biochar into feed. And that's where it's got real scope because it reduces methane emissions from cattle. And so essentially, and biochar, if you can get amendments into feed and then they spread it naturally, it's inoculated with their gut flora, which is, bacillus, and then it reduces methane and gets spread. So you can combine it with minerals and biochar, and cattle love it. They smash it. They'll go straight to a bag of it and just eat it out of the bag. But yeah, inoculating biochar is, I use it whenever I make an inoculum from native forest microbes, I'll always incorporate biochar as a component of it, and it gets populated so heavily. It's amazing stuff. It's really, really good gear. So yeah, there's been a lot of biochar. The Chinese are doing huge. The Chinese are doing more biochar research than anyone, and biochar production. They see the value. I had Chinese researchers come to our research plots in Queensland to isolate phosphate solubilizing bacteria and fungi out of a paddock in Queensland.
Yeah.
So they see the value of it.
Yeah.
Look at all the research papers. It's all Chinese authors. They're driving it really heavily. But the biomass, where is the biomass coming from? This is where hemp is so important. It's because what's feeding this insatiable quest for biochar, it's got to come from somewhere. It's another thing as well, because not all chars act the same. So we did peanut husk char and it was brilliant. And then you may do another feedstock that doesn't work as well. The thing about hemp with some of the continuous flow units is you'll have long fibers, so then they get bound up. So you have to work out how you cut it into different sections so it suits your machine. So yeah, there's questions to ask and answer on all of it. But
okay, Brian, and then Amber, you're on mute, friend.
Sorry about
Your
that.
turn.
One question for Daniel, and actually one question for Gavin. Simple one for Gavin is using hemp to create biochar. What is the most optimum method for it? Is it using the entire plant? Is it using just the herd material, or what? And then for Daniel, your blockchain, I was curious about if this is a system set up like on an Ethereum smart contract blockchain, or if it's its own kind of a separate blockchain. Is there any integration with any of the others, like Cosmos Network, how Regen Network is actually doing, is put into conservation that land that's not being deforested. It actually is carbon accredited through the Regen Network, and they're actually trying to get into that carbon accreditation using the blockchain that way. Are you planning on doing something similar like that? And those are my two questions.
So we are, from a blockchain perspective, we're partnered with Algorand, Silvio McCauley and Sean Ford. We're dealing directly with the C-level at Algorand, and the reason for that is they're a carbon neutral, carbon negative blockchain, and we want to kind of practice what we preach. And so we're using the Algorand blockchain, and then we're also partnered with Global Logic, which was just purchased by Hitachi for $9.6 billion a couple of months ago. And so Hitachi, as you probably know, has a huge sustainability practice within Hitachi. So we'll be incorporating a lot of Hitachi's Lumada platform. And then beyond that, we're also partnered with Verses.io, VERSES.io, which is a spatial web technology and a new technology that allow us to go into greater detail and break down the acreage of hemp and understand the carbon sequestration based on everything from pH balance of the soil and every other measurement we can possibly capture. And then we will be integrating with third-party applications openly through API integration. And we'll have a supply chain component, a marketplace component, and then the carbon credit, carbon sequestration component.
Okay. I hope that answered questions, Gavin.
Yeah, that for that one, absolutely. Thank you, Daniel. And the optimal use for hemp in biochar for Gavin, the best way it's created. Sorry.
Yeah, I think what you'd be aiming for is biochar as essentially you want to be using biochar as the waste product, ideally. So whatever is not usable in another format, you then biochar it, and then develop a format for how you process it in that way. The thing about hemp is transportation. So you don't want to be transporting it too far in terms of carbon and whatever else. So trying to get biochar units that are close and can deal with whatever format that the product comes in. So it's sort of it's a chicken and egg type question a little bit.
Just let me take a swing at that as well. We're partnering with a group that's developing trailer-based biochar pyrolysis machines, as well as cutters, dryers and cutters, continuous flow. So there is something coming down the line. And Mandi, I know we're out of time here, so did that answer?
That's okay. We just had an entire discussion, and it comes up a lot, biochar and how it's made and that it's made right. And so, yeah, I would love to introduce these questions, but there's two other people I want to introduce. First, Amber, your hand's been up, so I'd like to patiently hand it over to you real quick. And then earlier I saw in the chat that there was quite a bit of discussion about India, and we have a guest from India. And so I would love when we're done to have you go ahead and speak and introduce what you're working on. So you can, I know there was a comment of boots on the ground already in India. So Amber, go ahead, you first.
In a strange way, what I'm working on has to do with India, because the inventor and the co-founder is from India, and he was able to get a US patent for basically replacing, or I should say drastically reducing the use of high intensity grow lamps. So it can be used not just for marijuana, but also for like food production and that sort of thing. We definitely want to, we have interest in India too, but things move a little bit differently out there. So my question actually, I think it was for Daniel, excuse me. Yes, it is for Daniel. Number one, can you please tell me, this came up while you were speaking, the blockchain that you were just mentioning that you're going to work with, because I was told that since my startup is an impact company, that I'm going to be able to do like a cryptocurrency for it. And the thing is, and this is just really my question that I had from the beginning, and I can tell that everybody really on here probably feels how I do. My favorite saying is from Coco Chanel. It is, the best things in life are free, the second best are very expensive. Okay. I know that we can give the carbon credits to the major corporations like gas and oil companies and that sort of thing. My question is, how do we get it to the farmers? How do we get carbon credits to the farmers?
So, and I'm assuming that question was for me, Amber. We will be issuing them directly to the farmer in the form of tokens, and then they'll be able to utilize those tokens and exchange them for fiat currency anywhere in the world.
Okay, great. So just by them, because again, so we know, and I'm just now learning so much about this topic. Again, so large projects can be financed by large corporations, but is it simply the use of, let's say it's like a small farming community, and they're not yet using high intensity grow lamps, but they want to scale their business and use our product. Like, I'm just kind of thinking because again, we actually really want to help the environment and help kind of spread the wealth around a little bit.
That's fantastic. We're focused on the biomass itself and soil sequestration. So we wouldn't really be on the electronic side of it. So the carbon credits that you're generating by reducing the electrical consumption by using, I'm assuming, some sort of LED based grow light.
It's actually harnessing the power of the sun. It's kind of like how they did with the pyramids, but there's a lot more to it. That's how the man from India was able to get a patent in the US, actually.
Sure.
But I guess that's kind of forward thinking for, I know how we're going to be using the carbon credits, but again, this is more for the little guys, but we'll table that. Thank you.
Great, thank you for the question.
Okay, one other, I'm not sure how to say your name from India. Is it Mahima? Okay, you're on mute, young lady.
Yes, it's Mahima. Thank you, Mandi. Thank you for this. Thank you inviting me for this event. I'm very grateful. From India, I'm attending this event. So I'm really grateful to all of the guys, and I'm really nice to meet you. I'm from India, and also I work in a US company, and I'm a recruiter as well as a software developer. I would love to help you all in the Hemp process and the organization as what will I can do for you guys. So yeah, it's just lovely.
Well, thank you very much. Boots on the ground. Feel free to leave your contact information. And if anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. But Gavin, do you have anything else that we want to kind of share, or a message? Where should people be paying attention? What maybe aren't we talking about that we should be talking about? Any closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts, I probably should have actually talked more about my own company, but and I will just briefly. So Organichain is our own project using blockchain to certify regenerative agriculture on farms, much like the previous conversations we've been having. And it's essentially about simplifying the processes for farmers to transition to forms of agriculture that are less impactful on our environment. So what we should all be doing, we should all be working as hard as we can to purchase more consciously, to support regenerative agriculture across, and hemp is one part of that. But agriculture represents the greatest capacity on our planet to stabilize the trajectory of our climate. So helping farmers that are producing better reducing their inputs, moving away from pesticides and herbicides so we can diminish the capacity for an insect Armageddon. You know, we really can be making a lot of choices on a day-to-day basis. And so that's what we're trying to do through Organichain, is to try and support farmers to transition towards organic regenerative agriculture, and use a multitude of cropping types, get the best outcomes for the land and the best outcomes for consumers. So we're not eating tainted food and that the land heals at the same time. We are at a point where we need to re-engage with our natural systems. We need to reimagine ourselves as a component of this ecosystem, as opposed to someone sitting outside the bowl looking in. We're in the bowl. And if we continue on the pathway that we're on, we're going to run out of the stuff that we need to live. So, yeah, it's a big task in front of us. So it's great. Thanks. Really appreciate you, Mandi, bringing people together. And you know, these conversations are critical to what we need to be doing. So
yeah, Gavin, I'd love to connect, by the way. This is Daniel Higby. I'd love to connect because we could benefit from your knowledge and experience. And of course, we are highly promoting regenerative farming.
Yeah, I'm right with you, Daniel. No, we'll definitely do that, mate, for sure. After I sleep for a little bit.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I did notice that there were a number of you on this call that I would love to highlight. Peter, I would love to hear from you eventually. I'd love to connect. I want to open this platform so you guys have an opportunity to connect and build relationships, move business along. Tomorrow we have a discussion again about the supply chain, the track and trace of the technology involved in the track and trace, not necessarily on the carbon credit, but on the supply chain and management. And then on Thursday, Dave Greer, who's also on the call, is going to be joining, and we're going to be talking about decortication and his decortication equipment. I saw there were a couple of questions about the mobile decortication. And so Dave, I tagged you in that. There are a couple of questions in the chat looking for mobile decortication and equipment. So join us then. But yes, Gavin, we do these a lot. I have, in fact,
you're gonna make me get up early again. Stop making me get up early.
Well, let me let you in on a little secret. These are recorded and transcribed and then shared on the YouTube channel. Yeah. So if you want to join the conversation, this is obviously where you've got to be and join in on the membership. But yes, thank you guys. We've now run over a little over an hour. I want to invite you all to come back. Please register, subscribe to our YouTube channel, help out there, share the word. Definitely invite others to join, right? This is a community and a group, and I can't do it without you guys. We can't do it without our team. So Michelle, thank you very, very much. I don't know if either Fern or Elena are on as well, but reach out, you guys. Let me know if you need anything. Other than that, we're going to sign off, and thank you very much. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Gavin.
Thank you very much.
Once again, Mandi, always great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandi.
Thank you very, very much.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll be in touch.
Bye-bye.